for my ILP, I selected the book Brave New World, and while reading, I focused on the techniques of maintaining control that were utilized by the world state, and I saw a lot of parallelisms made to the same ones used by religions, so I wanted to draw comparisons for you and help you understand that. Comparing the world state to religions, both used the utilization of control techniques to maintain control over a population, and the world state more specifically used soma, hypnopaedia, conditioning, and the solidarity services, and that's the orgy porgy if you didn't remember. Christianity. The first quote that really set me off to look into Christianity was, "Christianity without tears, that's what soma is." So the first technique of control that Christianity utilizes is the creation of sin. And what I mean when I say this is that the people in charge, like the church, they decided that certain actions would be immoral and punishable. And these actions are outlined through the Ten Commandments. It's a guideline of how to live your life, and it's sort of drilled into you from as soon as you start going to church or Sunday school, if any of you did that. And it's similar to conditioning. And how they make these two things really work is through the threat of hell and the promise of an afterlife. If you live your life, if you abstain from sin, and you follow the Ten Commandments, then you have the promise of the afterlife. But should you choose to refrain from following these guidelines, there is the threat of hell. And this is comparable in Brave New World, the threat of hell, to being exiled. For example, Bernard being sent to Iceland is like going to hell because you didn't live how the people in charge wanted you to, and you were out of control. One of the more striking techniques of control that has been used by the Catholic Church are indulgences. And in the 14th century, people believed that when you died, you were sent to a place called purgatory, which is like limbo. So, and that's where your soul was processed, where you would be determined whether you would spend eternity in heaven or in hell. So the Catholic Church sold things to families of the deceased, and in some cases to the people before they would die, known as indulgences, and it supposedly shortened your time in purgatory. And as we can see, this is very corrupt, and they were just trying to increase revenue for the church so that they could maintain their iron grip on society and, keep control. The next religion that I wanted to go into is Islam. And a quote that brought me to that was, "We have the world state now, in Forge Day celebrations, and community sings and solidarity services, and all these are very ritualistic and things that are just a general part of life for the people who live in the world state." So the first technique of control utilized by Islam are the 5 pillars of Islam. This basically set up what it is to be a Muslim and how you're intended to live your life. For example, one of the pillars is prayer 5 times a day, and this is really comparable to the solidarity services because although it's less frequent, it's still a ritual that they conduct sort of on schedule, keeping a routine and staying within control. A slightly more extreme version of guidelines used in certain sects of Islam is Sharia law, and this is a more extreme way of keeping control over the population. Not everyone uses this, but certain things like theft is punishable by the loss of your right hand is one of the guidelines in Sharia law, and this is a very firm way of keeping control over the population that is used by Islam. And then once again, we're able to see the threat of hell.
Hit the stop button. Presentation killer.
So once again, we're able to see the threat of hell and the promise of an afterlife, which once again hell is like being exiled for not complying with the guidelines and not being able to be controlled. And afterlife is what you are rewarded for complying with these commands. One of the much stronger comparisons that I saw was in Hinduism, and these are two quotes from page 27. "All wear green," said the soft but very distant voice, beginning in the middle of a sentence, "and Delta children wear khaki. Oh no, I don't want to play with Delta children, and Epsilons are still worse. They're too stupid to be able to read or write. Besides, they wear black, which is such a beastly color. I'm so glad I'm a Beta." And then further along on the page, "Alpha children wear gray. They work much harder than we do, because they're so frightfully clever. I'm really awfully glad I'm not a Beta, because I don't want to work so hard. And we are much better than the Gammas and Deltas. Gammas are stupid. They all wear green, and Delta children wear khaki. Oh no, I don't want to play with the Delta children, and Epsilons are still worse. They're too stupid to be able to." And but you get the gist. So, in India, there was a caste system set in place by Hinduism. It's much less, it's subsided now, but it was pretty extreme at one point. And I saw a very large parallelism, as you can see, just in the shape. It's the caste system set in place there, where at the top you have gods, followed by the Brahmin, and all the way down to the Untouchables, where in the Brave New World you had the world controllers, and then the Alphas, and you work your way down to the Epsilons. So the world controllers are what determines how you're intended to live your life. They keep control over the entire population, and this is comparable to the gods because in Hinduism they're the ones who determine how everyone is supposed to live their lives. And another similarity is the Brahmin were the priests, so they would carry out these actions throughout the rest of the caste and set an example, as well as that's what the Alphas did for the rest. And then at the bottom we have the Epsilons and the Untouchables, and they're almost not considered humans to some degree. All the other castes recognize that they have a purpose and that they're necessary, and they appreciate it to some degree, but no one wants to be them. They just understand that you need them in order to keep the rest of the caste system up, because if you know anything about architecture, the most important part of a structure is the foundation. So if you were to build the rest of your caste system on a weak base, it would surely fall. And another stronger comparison between the two is predestination, where you have no ability to move up in your caste. You're destined to stay as a Gamma for the rest of your life. So there's no opportunity to move up. You just have to enjoy your life as best as you can. So for this class discussion, I'd like for you to think for a second about if you think the utilization of the techniques for maintaining control used by the world state and these religions, if these are beneficial or detrimental to society, and if you could just make sure that you have a justification for where you stand. So if you would follow the arrows, if you think that these are beneficial, please stand over here, and if they're detrimental, would you do me a favor and stand over on that side of the platform? You can stand on the side if you want.
I'm good.
No, I'm just going to walk the line and sort of mediate a little discussion between the two of you. So,
in some sense, it still keeps going.
if you've all thought out what you want to say, Joe, I noticed that you're one of the few on the detrimental side. Would you mind explaining your stance?
Well, other than determining each individual's life, restricting any ability for individualism, they also make threats to exile them or destroy anything that they condition them to want. So not only do they assign and condition them to believe certain things, but they also threaten to take them away by authority. That is a no-brainer.
So you think that the sort of predestination is detrimental. Do any of you have a response as to why you stand over here and why you disagree? Matt?
I was about to raise my hand, but I think it's beneficial as a society for the society as a whole, because it keeps somewhat of order. There is some methods to the madness of the society and the world. Like they do have better order. They don't have uprisings as often.
So like
it
guides.
keeps guidelines so you don't have people going after.
Alright, so one of the commandments is thou shalt not kill. Do you think that without that you'd be potentially, cutting off Joe's head?
No, but I think that you would have more leeway. It would be, if I really, really, really hate Joe and he like did me wrong, I'm gonna stab him a couple times.
Alright. So I'll just say something for the detrimental side because it's sort of, unbalanced to maybe change your mind or give you a new perspective. I think that it's possible that these are detrimental to society because, they restrict individuality and it sort of sets the tone. The people who are in control at the top almost determine the morals for everyone else below based on saying the commandments or the 5 pillars, for example. So do any of you have anything to say about that on either side?
So you said that it restricts individuality. I think that that's kind of, well, it's like you can make a choice, actually. You don't have to believe what your religious superiors tell you. If you have your own mind and can think of all the reasons you should or should not listen to your religious superiors, then that's up to you. So I think that if people can think for themselves, then they should have the option of religion because it's comforting for a lot of people.
That's a very good point. Anybody else have anything they'd like to toss into the octagon, Stephanie?
I would just like to say, I'm a big proponent of religion being a very personal experience. And like you mentioned earlier, there's only 5 pillars of Islam. There's only 5 of all the words in the universe. There's only 5 pillars that are your guidelines. So you have room to grow as a person in your religion. There's just these guidelines that are designed to help you grow and assist your growth.
So you can
So that's
take it, perceive it as you will. Thank you, that's a very good point. Sure.
1 minute.
Okay, so if nobody else has anything else to say, I'd just like to thank you. This was a really good discussion. And thanks for your attention. Unless Megan has something to say. Oh, okay.